Well, new preventative detention legislation is the focus, the final sitting week of Parliament, and could even mean it goes a bit later than scheduled. The opposition leader is claiming only a few people will apply under the new laws. Joining me live is Liberal Senator and Shadow Environment Minister Jonathon Duniam. Thanks for your time.
Tom?
It was out, this legislation, I think, only for an hour or so. We had the opposition leader saying it would only apply to 4 people. Do you know what that's based on?
Well, look, the opposition leader, the Shadow Attorney General and other Shadow Ministers have obviously been in discussion with the government for some time about what the government are proposing to do to fix up this mess. And so with the absence of detail, it's hard to see things being as solid as we'd hoped. I mean, they didn't get it right the first time round, and there are concerns that perhaps they're not getting it right now. So we've got this week. Certainly we understand the legislation will be introduced into the Senate on Wednesday, or the amendments to the legislation, and we'll deal with them then and we'll look at them in detail. But given their track record so far, I don't think it's unfair to assume that they will do the worst possible job.
Well, when you've just been given a briefing, I guess it's less about assumptions and focusing on the facts. The principle of this, that a High Court has made a decision that essentially it can't just be purely up to the Minister to be able to mete out what effectively is a form of punishment. So it needs to go through the courts, even if you change what process can happen in those courts. Do you agree with that principle, not just creating more laws that would get knocked out by the High Court?
Well, I mean, obviously one of my big concerns around the judiciary generally is that sometimes decisions made by the judiciary are out of step with community expectation, which is why we need to ensure that we have laws that actually meet with community expectation. That's what we're elected to do, to come to this place and represent our communities and make sure that the laws are fit for what the community want. They want to feel safe. And so let's see what is proposed by the government. We will work with them to make sure it is the best possible outcome. Everyone wants to go home this Christmas and make sure their communities are safe.
So concern with the judiciary. So are you not trusting the High Court to be able to make these decisions? Are you saying they should just be up to politicians?
It's not just about the High Court. I mean, we see countless cases in Supreme Courts of various states. We've seen federal court rulings. The High Court, of course, sometimes the community don't agree with the decision that is made. I don't think there are many Australians out there that are happy that we have in excess of 100 people roaming around our communities that have at some point in time been a grave risk to society. So we've got to make sure...
On that, and when you say grave risk, anyone that was subject to a crime, convicted of that, and the sentence carried at least 7 years, could be put into preventative detention. So is that the right threshold on that?
Well, could be, and we need to see I haven't seen the detail yet of what is proposed. But I'd want to be sure that what we are doing is anyone who poses a risk to the community, mine included, is not going to be allowed to roam free.
I just want to say again on this judiciary question though. So are you saying that a system where they ultimately decide, obviously you guys have the laws, you pass the laws, they decide when they should apply. Are you saying you don't trust them on this particular matter? They'll be too soft on preventative detention?
Look, I want to see what is proposed, and then we've got to see if laws pass this place that require judicial interpretation and then a test to be applied by judges about whether someone goes back into detention, well then so be it. But let's see
that's what's going to happen on the principle. So I get you need to see the exact detail and whether you think it's a good law, but do you trust the judiciary, judges to apply the law on this particular matter?
No one is perfect. Judges are no exception to that. We've seen bad judgments handed down in the past, and this is when we need to alter laws to make sure that they do meet with community expectation. So that's the process that we will go through over the next few days. If things are too weak, then we're not just going to wave them through. We're going to work with the government. I'm not talking about the laws and the weakness. It's in terms of those judges. When you say there have been bad judges, I'm sure judges would say there have been bad governments. I'm sure they would.
Bad laws passed.
Yes, indeed.
If you're happy with the laws, don't you have to trust the judiciary to uphold?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, but nothing is ever set and forget, Tom, and we have to make sure, as I said before, that once these laws are being applied, that judges are doing their job, that they are doing it in accordance with what we, the representatives of the community, want to have happen in terms of how the laws
Their interpretation is up to them. How do you make sure they're doing their job? What do you mean by that?
Well, we need to make sure that the end outcome of legal application, laws being applied, people being incarcerated if need be, is in step with community expectation. That is important. If we find that there are suspended sentences and the like where people are getting off lightly, then the laws aren't working. And
then you need more laws, is your point?
Well, then we need to make sure the laws are strong and that the judiciary have a clear indication of exactly what the people want through the Parliament, and that's what the laws reflect. Environmental
Protection Act, which Labor has promised big changes to. It looks like next year Which is a good
Yeah.
sign. Careful deliberation, taking
Indeed.
everyone's opinions into account here.
Yeah. Well, look, I'd love to think it was like that, but as I said in the Parliament just last week, I think it was the end of October, after 18 months of telling us how important this was, and we've got to get it done this year. We'll have draft laws into the Parliament by the end of this year. This is the last sitting week, and I'm not seeing them. End of October, we had 50 pages of a handful of high-level principles to replace 1,000 pages of legislation. That is not the result of careful deliberation. That is a very slow yet botched process where I don't think anyone's going to come out of this feeling any more certain about where the community is
Or
headed.
it's a really difficult area.
Very difficult area, but when you bring everyone together, from the business community and investment community, miners, through to the NGOs and environmental organisations, you should be able to get a pretty clear picture well in advance of 18 months. But here we are today, not a single shred of legislation on the
We'll be
table.
talking about it in 2024. Jonathon Duniam, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Tom.